Utah. We are so happy to have you join us today. You're listening to the Liberty Mom Show. I'm your host, Dalane England. We have several Liberty Moms with us that are going to be joining us today, but right now we have an amazing Liberty Dad that is with us. And I want to introduce you to a great man, Frank Mylar, who is running for Utah Attorney General. Welcome, Frank.
Thank you, Dalane.
Oh,
It's great to
we're
be here.
so glad to have you with us. Thank you so much. I know you're very busy, very busy doing so much good. And I know you're running an amazing campaign. And you have so many accomplishments. And instead of giving all those accomplishments to invite you in, I felt like our time would be better spent if we talk about those during the show and you can kind of expound on them a little bit. So
Sure.
Frank has been on the front lines working as an attorney for over 35 years. And he has worked on literally every issue that is important to Utahns. And one of the reasons that I wanted to have Frank on is because there are a lot of races. We have the state conventions and the county conventions, a lot of good people running in these different races. But I want every listener and watcher, viewer to know is that the Attorney General race, that position is one of the most important, if not the most important position in our state when it comes to protecting our freedoms and liberties. Who is standing as the guard, as the enforcement officer? No one is stronger than the Attorney General. Yes, our sheriffs also, but our sheriffs need the backing of our Attorney General. And that is very important. And the Attorney General is in a very interesting position because not only is the Attorney General's job to protect the citizens of the state, but also to represent the government entities and agencies. So that is why it is so important. And that is why we must have someone that is above all fray, that has absolute integrity and honor, and not, one of the problems is having connections with people in government agencies where it would be very hard for Attorney General to prosecute their friend who is in a government agency. So we really have to have someone that is really beyond that fray, that doesn't have any skeletons in the closet, that we know has been on the front lines of these issues, because everybody can talk about it, but we need someone that actually does. So Frank, I'm going to pepper you with some questions so people can get to know who you are. First of all, I want you to tell us, where did you first learn about the Constitution?
Well, great. I think everyone just has such a shallow view of the Constitution growing up. I lived in a number of places growing up, but ended up in high school in Seattle, Washington. I knew then when I was in high school, this is actually as liberal place as San Francisco, but just didn't have the reputation. But oddly enough, here I am in that area, and I start reading Milton Friedman's Free to Choose, which I really recommend to everybody. Just an amazingly awesome book on true foundational and constitutional principles. And then it was when I went to Wheaton College. It's a very conservative college in Chicago suburb. And I had an American history professor that we had to go through microfiche. But I was just astounded to read all these letters on microfiche back then. And this is in the early 80s. And just to find out how important Christianity was to our founding fathers. I had been sold a bunch of lies in my public education during all those 12 years. And I kind of thought that somehow religious freedom had to have something to do with it, but it was never promoted as really a reason for the American Revolution. And so that got me, and then I was reading the Federalist Papers as part of that class and the Constitution. And I just was really amazed. And it was also around that time where I was convinced I wanted to go to law school. I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to be in a profession that could help protect this important document.
Love that. That is really awesome. Well, thank you so much. Okay, so Frank, you have 3 other people running against you, whom I'm actually friends with every one of them, and I really like them as people.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But what is it that for this position sets you apart? What makes you different than the other 3 candidates?
Yeah, and again, they're all nice people, and I like, I greet them warmly when I see them. The big thing is my campaign's based upon trusted experience. So first of all, the experience is lacking, I believe, in the other candidates. It's considered the chief law enforcement officer of the state. Yet, interestingly, I'm the only candidate that's actually prosecuted anyone. Had my first felony trial 2 years out of law school. I'm also the only candidate that's ever had jury trials. I've had a lot of them. I've had like 3 or 4 in the last 2 years, actually. I'm the only candidate that's actually argued cases, precedent-setting cases, before our Utah Supreme Court and 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. That's an important part of what the Attorney General's office does, is both the trial work and the appellate work. And that's really combat for an attorney. If you really want to trust somebody, they've got to have that kind of experience, both in the criminal law and as well as in the civil law. And I have both of those, which is unique, actually. And I worked for 12 years in the Attorney General's office. One candidate, to her credit, did work about 6 years in the AG's office, and that's great. I worked 12, and I worked in a myriad of areas in that office, so I know it well. I still have been defending county sheriffs for the last 24 years. And as you said, they're on the front lines of often defending our constitutional rights, fighting the craziness with illegal aliens and all the crime that's increasing. And so I have actually really good relationships with all of our sheriffs in the state, and I know I've been working with them. So this is not something I have to get up to speed on. I'm ready to hit the ground running the day I get in that office.
That's a really important point that you brought up there, because we tend to think of the AG as really on the more of the criminal side. And
Yes.
you tend to think of that the AG takes on those criminal cases and defends against criminal behavior. But what is also really important, and that is important, and that is what AG does, but it's also important. I really appreciate what you said about the civil side, because that is also very important, because that is where the person who's in the AG's office and this position really affects the personal lives of Utah citizens more
Yes.
than really any other office does. And not only for the criminal side, but also for the civil side, for the social issues, the
Yes.
things that really make Utah Utah.
Yeah. And
And
I
I know that you
go ahead.
go ahead.
Well, I ran into some problem issues, actually. I ran into an issue where I was defending the Highway Patrol Memorial Cross cases, and they didn't really have someone that seemed to even care about religious freedom from the AG's office that was actually defending the case. I was defending as a private attorney of the association, because the Highway Patrol Association actually put up the crosses. And we did very well, thankfully. I did not charge them a dime for my work in doing that. And so sometimes even the AG's office has not shown itself necessarily to be diligent in terms of the attorneys that they have. Now, there are some really good ones. I do not want to detract from that. There's some excellent attorneys in that office, but I actually am familiar with some of them, that are heading up different divisions. Joni Jones is heading up litigation. I've had a lot of interaction with her. I believe she's a super competent attorney. Melissa Holyoke, who's the Court of Appeals person. So there's some really good people in that office. I don't want to detract from that at all. But that's just not always the case. And they really need somebody with expertise to be able to manage that office well and to know what kind of advice is being given to agencies. That's another thing that they don't think about. There's the criminal component, there's the civil component, and then there's the advice to agencies. Is that liberal advice, or is that really sound constitutional and legal advice?
And right now, Frank, that's such a good point, because right now we are dealing with some very serious issues where our world is just changing and turning. Our culture, there's a movement to completely disintegrate our culture. We have just recently in Utah, we passed a law that only girls can play on girls' sports, that biological boys cannot play on girls' sports. And we know that is going to be challenged. And we need an AG who is going to stand for that, because that is it isn't really a political issue. It can be turned into one, but that is an issue of just plain what is true. That is an issue of truth. Nobody can actually change their sex, and women are different than men. And we have fought as women for years to have women's sports for the very reason that not that women are are less than men or not as good, but that we are different. Our biologies are different. Our bodies are different. We compete differently. And so therefore, for women to be able to compete and have women's sports as also, and also to protect women, because when women play on a lot of sports with biological men, just that testosterone and that just becomes dangerous for girls
Yes.
and women.
Yes.
Well, women's sports is a big issue, and we need someone that really knows this issue, can understand it, and we know we can trust to stand on those front lines. And then
Yes.
also for men going into biological men, going into women's spaces, into women's private spaces. This is a really important issue for me personally. Not just because I'm a woman, but partly, but also because I have daughters,
Yeah.
granddaughters.
Yep.
And I really care about your wife, your daughters, and everyone else's, because there is a difference between men and women, boys and girls. And if the government can't acknowledge that literal difference, we're in serious trouble.
Yeah. And
So,
most of, yeah. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no. So
I
tell
was going
us
to say,
where you stand on that.
yeah, most of the other candidates are going to say they're for
Yes.
defending these things, and they're going to say they're for defending a lot of things, but they really haven't been anywhere doing these, fighting for these causes, especially if they weren't getting paid, and especially if they were in the courts. I'm one of only 2 attorneys in this race who's even handled Title IX cases. Title IX is actually the federal statutes that actually helps protect women's sports. It was actually passed in about 1969 or 1970. And that's what's being eroded by how the Biden administration is trying to interpret it. And we need to intervene and make sure, like with these laws that we've passed. Before COVID, there was a lawsuit that I was working on with the Alliance Defending Freedom that would have actually been against a university here in Utah. COVID hit, and it actually it canceled all the sports, and
Right.
therefore the lawsuit was canceled. Although the Alliance Defending Freedom, whom I work with, they actually did pick up these cases across the country and help defend the two track stars from Connecticut who were denied the gold and silver medal because a male beat them. They should have been a gold and silver medalists.
Yes.
And that's just wrong. It's just wrong on so many levels. Men and women should
It is.
realize this is just not fair. And it doesn't matter if you have testosterone blockers or nonsense like this. Men and women are just different. And that's good. That's a good
It's
thing. It's not a
wonderful.
bad thing.
Yeah.
And I'm glad there's differences. But and sports are where that's different. Bathrooms is where that's different. And I don't
Yes.
care if you've had a surgery or not, especially with our minors in
Yes.
school, we never, ever want to have a biological male of any sort enter a girl's bathroom. That is where a lot of these assaults happen. It happened in the state of Virginia, and it's one of the reasons that there's a Republican governor right now in Virginia, because
Yes.
he helped uncover that with parents going over the heads of the school districts.
Yes, very good point, because it is such an important issue. And we do have to have someone we can trust and that's really strong on that issue and that has some experience in it, because experience makes all the difference. Okay, and then while we're on this, I just want to ask you where you stand on pro-life issues. And I know that because I have actually worked with you. That's where I first met you 15 years ago, working on some pro-life legislation. So tell us where you stand on life.
Yeah, and as you noted, I worked. I'd come down to the legislature quite frequently to help on any pro-life issue that I could. I've also helped in litigation. There was a few years back, about 15 years ago, probably too, where I was able to defend pro-life sidewalk counselors from criminal charges. So I'm not only the only candidate who's prosecuted criminals, I'm actually the only one that's actually done criminal defense in the courts. And that case went to trial. And by God's grace, we won and exonerated their free speech rights, because this was on a public sidewalk. But we know that Salt Lake City is run by people who do not respect life. And they sent 8 officers out to the scene as if they were some terrorists or something.
Right.
And they were peacefully expressing their First Amendment rights on a public sidewalk. And so we did vindicate that. I also want the viewers to know I did not charge them a dime for this. And this is why the trusted experience comes in. You will hear that a lot. I've actually handled a lot of cases for people and never charged them. And part of the reason is it would cost thousands of dollars, thousands. And do you know how many people would just settle with a plea in abeyance or some kind of a plea? Yes. Just because I don't want to pay 10, 20, 30, 50 grand. If going to trial cost about 50 grand,
it
you know,
does.
And that's about what they would have been looking at, trying to defend themselves and upholding their rights. And so that's why I really want the viewers to know that you can trust me over the other candidates, because I'm the only one that's actually been vindicating people's constitutional rights and not getting paid for it when I did it. Another pro-life thing I wanted to point out, because I had worked with a lot of legislators, LeVar Christensen and a lot of others years ago, and for parental rights issues, but also pro-life issues and religious freedom issues. And once a group of senators and legislators called me in and said, Frank, I'm really doing the job of an AG at this point, because they're calling me in and say, Frank, how can we make our pro-life laws stronger? And they didn't call the attorney general in, who was a Republican attorney general. They called me in, and I said, yes, we can do this. We can do the ultrasound. We can do this. But I've litigated issues, but I want to get the best. So I called Steve Aden from Washington, D.C., who's one of the top pro-life litigators in the country. We brought him out free of charge to the state. He helped us craft those laws that are still on the books today. Before our great Supreme Court that we have now, they were still upheld as constitutional. And so, and I can tell you on a weekly basis, monthly basis for sure, I get calls from Pro-Life Utah, pregnancy resource centers, different pro-life organizations across the state that say, Frank, we have an issue. It could be anything from a landlord-tenant thing where they're trying to kick them out because they're pro-life, or it could be that there's somebody that's telling me that they're going to have an abortion tomorrow unless they meet with an attorney. And that literally happened. I was able to reschedule my events. I met with this woman and Pro-Life Utah agents at 7 p.m. in the evening, answered all their questions. And by God's grace, that woman did not have an abortion the next day.
That is just so amazing. And I do know that that is true. I'm here to tell you that is totally true, because I have been on those front lines with up the legislature. We have worked on that legislation, and who we always call is Frank, because we know we can trust him, and because we know he knows what he's doing, and we have so much success. You have just been such a blessing to the state of Utah.
Thanks.
You've been working behind the scenes, pro bono. We've never had you charge us anything, and we call you and say we need help, and you're there, and we're just so appreciative. So we know that you are, not only are you capable of it, but this is the important thing, is we know where your principles lie, because anybody can say, and everyone does, I'm conservative, I'm pro-life, I'm pro women, only women playing on women's sports, but we know where you stand because your fruits have proven it. We've seen what you've actually done.
Well, and the thing is you're right. The other three candidates are going to say they agree with me on all these issues, and you never know what they're going to do until the pressure's on.
And not that they're being disingenuous, but how do they know what they could withstand?
Yeah,
and we don't know what they're really capable of, because they haven't ever done it before.
Yeah. And actually, if you can see it here, I've actually had this picture of Daniel in the lion's den in my office ever since I've been practicing law. He's always been a figure to me in the Bible that I looked up to, because he was kind of a counselor. He was kind of an attorney general.
Yes, he was.
In some ways, he gave advice to the king of the king of the most powerful king on earth at that time. And but he also wasn't going to bow the knee to him. He had his lines where he was going to draw, and he was not going to bow down to that king or to any other God but the one true God. And I think that is important, because the candidates need to have been battle tested. And I believe I'm the only one that's been battle tested. I've had to stand up to state agencies. I've had to stand up to corruption in government, risking my job. And I've done that on more than one occasion. And I've also been able to stand up to different organizations in lawsuits. Just because I'm defending a suit doesn't mean I should blindly defend it. So if somebody has done something wrong, it's always been my position, we need to offer that person a reasonable compensation. And so that's something the AG's office does. Sometimes they just blindly defend, and they really don't care that constitutional rights are being trampled on. That's the type of thing that needs to be looked at. The other thing I think, in terms of integrity, we need to have integrity in our campaigns. Are we really experienced litigators, like some are saying to be, and yet they haven't really litigated any cases at all? That's significant to me. They haven't really prosecuted criminally anyone at all. And I think the other thing to look at, that every viewer needs to understand, look at where our donations come from. My donations, every one of them, come from people like you and I. They are not corporations. They are not lobbying groups. They are not, beer distributors or, Facebook and all these other different companies.
Yes.
Those are the kinds of organizations that do support my competitors. And they want to own them. They want to be able to give $4,000 to this person or 10 grand, and they want that to be a little piece of ownership.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the problem is, once you take donations from a big corporation or a big company or even an individual, they donate because they want you to represent their values and what they believe in. And so if you take money from someone, then there is a degree of being beholden. And even if you don't intend to be or plan to be, it makes the position at risk. It puts the position at risk.
It does.
Because then it can be seen as a conflict of interest. It even if it isn't, but it is a conflict of interest. It absolutely is. Because it's hard to do what you're supposed to do in that position.
Go right ahead. Part of this fundraising issue is one of the reasons also that I'm a convention only candidate. I really do not like the fact, and it seems reprehensible to most people, that you can actually buy signatures and get on the primary ballot. My desire is to, hopefully, Lord willing, to get 60% at the convention. If I don't, and I'm not going to make it to the primary, then so be it. But I'm not going to play these games where you have to raise $300,000 to be able to get on the ballot. Do you know how you have to sell your soul to raise 300 grand in an AG race? Congress, they have to raise millions, but you should not have to raise 300,000 for the entire campaign. That's just huge, and a huge amount to have to raise just to pay for signatures. So I'm just categorically against that. I think it breeds corruption. It doesn't necessarily make it certain, of course, but you're more likely to be swayed.
Well, it's definitely a conflict of interest. And the last thing we want in America is people to buy their way onto the ballot.
That's right.
That is so un-American. And it really violates the republic that we have, where we elect people to go get educated, to meet you, to talk to you, to ask you the hard questions, to look you in the eye, to look at your record, because everyone doesn't have time nor the will to do that. We elect people that are willing to do that. And that's the beauty of the caucus convention system.
Yes.
And so we ask delegates to really spend some time and getting to know the backgrounds and the heart of each one of the candidates. Now, what
I encourage delegates to do, and I love the delegate system, because the delegates actually want to get to meet me. They want to know information about the candidates. I ask them all to Google all 4 candidates.
Yes.
They will find some cases with one candidate. They will find 1 or 2 cases with another candidate, and they'll find 0 cases in Utah for the 4th candidate. And you need to look at those and say, wow, is this who I want representing me as Attorney General? And beyond that, so that's very important. Just Google. But then the other thing I think that makes my experience trusted is my work with Alliance Defending Freedom.
Yes.
I really want people to go to adflegal.org. I want them to scrutinize that website, that organization, and say, hey, is this the kind of person that I want to be my Attorney General? Is this the kind of person that I can count on to fight for my constitutional rights? And you can, because I'm an honor guard attorney with them. That means I've spent hundreds and hundreds of hours vindicating people's constitutional rights for free. That's how you get to be an honor guard attorney. And I'm really proud to be that, work with that organization, because it is such an amazing organization that was designed to fight back against what's going on in society.
And they do an amazing job. So they're a national company or a national law firm, and they just take on these cases where people's rights, their freedom of religion or their freedom of speech, are being violated by the government or by someone else. And they take these cases on, and they help people all across the country pro bono in almost every case.
Yeah.
And really help people. And you know, Frank is the attorney that they have in Utah. So when there's an issue, they call Frank and
Well,
say, you know, we need you to help us.
an example of that was during COVID. Many of us did not like the fact that the government was mandating vaccines. And Biden had mandated that healthcare corporations had to have vaccinations,
Yes.
even if you weren't actually seeing any patients. It was
Right.
ludicrous. But the ADF called me up and said, Frank, can you help us get religious exemptions for these people? I gladly took it. Again, I didn't charge a dime for it. By God's grace, everyone I helped got a religious exemption, including my daughter, who's a nurse at Primary Children's Hospital, who I'm proud to say Primary Children's Hospital did not give her any flack at all. And
Really?
they gave her the exemption to that, as well as the flu shot. And so, but if you don't fight for these, if you don't request them, then you face termination.
Yes, you do. And I know I have several friends that were terminated, that lost their jobs because they said, I'm not doing it. And so thank you. That really is a great accomplishment. Another story that I know of is when you were at a Utah County event and you were talking about Alliance Defending Freedom, and one of the delegates there, who's a really good friend of mine, I have a lot of respect for her, she realized that you had helped on a case where her son in high school, I don't remember the details of that, but I don't know if you do.
Yeah, this is not uncommon. I actually run into these issues with ADF calling and saying, Frank, we've got a situation going on, and it's usually a school or it's a university.
Yes.
And they are usually.
Ooh, we lost you for a minute. Hopefully you'll come right back, Frank. Lost connection. This is the wonders of the internet. Dang. Okay.
Sent a letter. Did we cut out there for a second?
You cut out for a second, so back up just a titch.
Yeah. So how long was I out? Sorry.
Not for very long.
Okay,
just
great.
Tell us about the school, what they
Okay,
did.
so I get calls from ADF every once in a while saying, hey, we need help because either a university or a public school is denying free speech and religious freedom rights. And sometimes we have to intervene and sue. Most of the time, thankfully, it's a letter. And that was what your friend was exactly talking about, is there was a letter that was written. And I had actually forgot about that particular situation where it was a club that they were trying to curtail their free speech rights.
Yeah, I love that because my friend was telling me that, like, she just went to this event and then you were speaking, and then she realized that you were the attorney that had helped her with her son. And I just thought that was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Frank helps so many people that he doesn't even remember all the people that he's helped. So it's helped so many. Okay, so Frank, we know that you have fought for, you have defended, and you've also prosecuted, both at this Utah state side. You've done it at the Utah Supreme Court. You've also done that on the United States Supreme Court. You are the honor guard for Alliance Defending Freedom. And I think that speaks volumes about where your principles are, because you would not be aligned with them. They would not have you if they didn't know and trust you. I can tell you that I have worked with Frank for 15 years, and I've just been absolutely amazed and impressed with his ability, his intelligence, and with his experience and what he knows and how he's able to go and defend us. So I've just been so pleased. And so I feel honored and really grateful that you're in the race and that I had the opportunity to support you. And I'm
Thank you.
very, very excited. I'm very pleased. And I really appreciate you putting your hat in the ring and being willing to go out there and really sacrifice your job. You have your own law practice. I think this is a really important part too, is that you have your own law practice and you have attorneys under you, because a lot of people will say, well, the attorney general really doesn't go to court, which is not true, because the attorney general does go to court and needs to be able to go to court. And also the attorney general does manage other people. There are
Yes.
600 people in the AG's office in Utah. I think almost 300 attorneys.
Yes.
And so, you do need to know how to manage other people, and attorneys are not always the easiest people to manage. So tell us about your experience in that arena.
Sure. I've managed attorneys actually inside the AG's office and outside the AG's office in my own private law firm. I've also worked with a number of other attorneys, not just Alliance Defending Freedom attorneys, but other attorneys in town. I'm actually currently practicing law, and I hate to say this, I have missed some Lincoln Day events. I will probably accidentally miss some county conventions because I'm actually the only candidate that's actually practicing law right now. Now,
Right.
when Sean Reyes said he wasn't running, that was December. I can't get rid of all my cases
Right.
in 6 months. Believe it or not, my life will be a lot better after a trial that's coming up that is done on April 19th. And so I'm actually in the trenches working with other attorneys constantly. I've also taught other attorneys. I've in a lot of ways, I've acted like an attorney general in that I've taught prosecutors in this state at the prosecutors conferences. And other county officials. I teach yearly at the Sheriff's Association conference. So this is something that I stay up on. I also have actually taught at Alliance Defending Freedom conferences, other attorneys. And so and those attorneys are learning about fighting constitutional suits for people so they can help vindicate people's constitutional rights. And so, again, it's kind of the thing that I've been doing. I actually used to even teach as an adjunct professor at the University of Utah corrections law. So I've been involved as teaching. I've taught in a lot of seminars. I've taught anti-pornography issues, parental rights issues, free speech issues, religious freedom issues. These are the things that I've actually done the teaching on. So when I come to the AG's office, it won't be in a vacuum for me. I'll be able to dovetail right in and be able to help lead this office. I also am the only candidate who has a master's in business administration. And so I know a lot about management and have been able to put that into practice in my law firm that I run. And so this is something you need to know as an attorney general. You actually are supposed to manage the attorneys in the office, not just be a figurehead. People are looking at it as a figurehead, and that is wrong. You need to manage the attorneys to have a good attorney general's office.
And I just want to point out, I just want to ask this question. If you're an attorney in the AG's office and the AG doesn't know how to litigate and doesn't know how to go to court, how much would I, as an attorney, really respect that person, and how much can I look up to them when they're more of a management role and they're not really an attorney that goes into court or hasn't really spent much time in court? I think that's really important as the AG to have the people underneath you be able to respect you and know that they can look to you for guidance, advice, and experience. So I think that's also a really important point. So Frank, you have been just amazing. Thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule, because I know between work and trying to run. Please tell us your website so we can go on the website and look you up and get this information.
Great. It's Frank Mylar and the number 4ag.com. Frank Mylar 4ag.com. You can find endorsements. You can find videos that are on there, short videos, 30-second videos. And you can also donate. I need people to donate.
Yes.
As I said, I do not have the big corporations donating. I need people listening to say, yes, I agree with that. Yes, I want to help. And I need people to give donations to help fund and get this message out.
Excellent. So it's Frank, MYLAR, number 4AG.com.
Yes.
So write that down, Frank Mylar, MYLAR, number 4AG.com.
Yes.
So yes, go there and you can get more information about Frank, but I think you've done an excellent job of covering really how powerful and how valuable you are to Utah and how much we really need you in this position. Do you have any last minute parting words that you want to share with us, Frank?
Yes. Again, I encourage people to Google the candidates and see what that experience is, and Google Alliance Defending Freedom, and pass the word on that I am a convention only candidate because I really
Yes.
believe in grassroots politics.
Yes, and that says you respect the delegates and the
Hmm.
work that they're doing. You respect it, and you're not going to go around them, and you're not
Yes,
buying your way onto the ballot.
that's right.
Frank, thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate you, and thanks. Get back to work. I know you got a lot of work to do, but we really appreciate you. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you. I'll
Thank
see
you.
you. Bye.
Thank you so much. Okay, well, that was really great. Frank is really a rock star. He really is by far, without question, as much as I love everyone that is running, he is by far the best candidate out there. So I hope that you will take that into consideration, do your own homework, because I don't want you to just believe me. I want you to go out and do your own homework so you can know for yourself. Okay, we have two other amazing, not two other Liberty Moms, but we have two Liberty Moms that will be joining us. One is going to be Jamie Renda, and she is an amazing Liberty Mom. I have loved getting to know her and working with her so much. She has created so much value for so many people, and she will be joining us. And then after that, we will have Melanie Mortensen, and she is running for the state for the um, Davis School District, not the state school board, but the Davis School District. And again, she is a definite Liberty Mom and has been working very hard, very great on education. She's a former educator herself, so she really understands what's going on in the classroom and understands what's happening to our schools and especially Davis County. So that will be a really interesting show. I think you'll really enjoy it. Jamie Renda is one of the founders of Path Forward. She's also a business owner. She owns Brixton Potatoes. And like I say, she is very on the front line. I see her at the Capitol all the time. She's very pro-life. She has an amazing story and what she has been doing. And we look forward to having her join us. In the meantime, I want to just take a moment and talk about our amazing caucus convention system. The reason that it is so valuable is because it is the microcosm of the republic. And why did our founding fathers choose of all the forms of government that they could choose? They could choose any form of government. They're starting anew. Clean slate. They could choose any form of government that they wanted to. They knew they didn't want a monarchy because they'd already lived under that. Not good. No freedom going on there. They didn't want a dictatorship for the same reasons. There's not that much difference, except a dictator is self-appointed or could even be elected. But a monarch is by divine right of the king. They knew they didn't want that. And they also knew, they didn't want anything to do with any oligarchy. They didn't want any form of government that the high concentration of power with just one or two or three or a small group of people. They wanted each individual's rights to be protected. They want everyone's rights to be honored. So they wanted a form of government that did protect every single individual's rights, not the rights of the masses and not the rights of the mob. And that's what a democracy is. And they knew that would not work because they knew, first of all, they don't last. It would not protect the rights of the individual. It would only protect the rights of the mob or majority. And they knew that we needed something with the rule of law. A republic has the rule of law. In a democracy, you just decide, you vote on every single thing that all the people do. There's no rule of law. It's just we decide today, tomorrow, what the new laws are going to be, what our stand is. And the rule of law is extremely essential to protecting freedom, to protecting rights, and to protecting individuals and giving everyone equal protection under the law. It's vital. Another reason is they wanted us to take an oath. And if we have the rule of law, our Constitution, we in a republic, anyone that is elected or holds a position of power takes an oath to uphold the Constitution, to not do what they want to do or what they think is good or best, but to uphold the Constitution. So every person takes that sacred oath, and that's really important. And the the beauty of the caucus convention system is we're not out there trying to decide who do we want to represent our party or who do we want to represent us based on radio spots, flyers that we get in the mail, or just word of mouth. We want to know who the best candidates are. So we hire or we elect people in our precincts, in our neighborhoods. We elect people to go be delegates and go do the work and really be in the trenches and find out and to interview every single candidate, at least, I say at least 3 times, but at least once, to meet them and ask them the questions and look at their history. And this is, I think, so important in as a delegate's position. And if you're not a delegate, this is something you can really support your delegates that represent you, support them in doing this. Say, have you had a chance to meet the people, but have you looked at their history? Have you looked at where they have done what they say they believe in? Do they have any experience? Are they just running now saying, oh, yes, I'm very pro-life, but I haven't ever done anything pro-life? Or I'm very supportive of the caucus, but I've never been involved in it. I support the caucus, but I'm going and getting signatures. So it really behooves delegates to do some history, to do some research, and to look at the background and see where they really stand and what they really believe, and find out what they have actually done, because there is nothing that screams louder than their history that tells you where they really stand and what they really believe. We're going to take a short break, and we're going to be right back with our Liberty Moms to share their experiences and hear from Jamie Renda and Melanie Mortensen. Stay with us. I emailed you the link, period. I emailed you the link, period. Thanks. I spelled it right when I sent it to you. It's in my computer, period. I can send it again, or I can send it to a different one, period.
Well, that recording was 47 minutes, so I'm going to have to chop it up a little.
I am so sorry.
That's okay.
She didn't get, she's texting me. I can't look at my phone. So, I think we should take off everything past when Frank, I forgot to stop it. So now Is it possible to vet that or to, I think
Yeah,
we might, well, it
I'm gonna
doesn't
edit
matter.
that and put it up on his website where the other one was, because that other one's too long. And this one, I'll
Yeah.
make this one shorter. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Cause I think that's what I got a lot of feedback. People, like, they were listening to it, but there's like, it's so long. I need
Well,
something
some
short.
people,
There's so many
no
candidates.
matter what you do, somebody's gonna find fault. That's
Well,
just
yeah,
who
but
they
I
are.
mean, it is too, an hour is too long
An hour's
because
too
there's so
long,
many
and
candidates.
long form videos are good if people are prepared for it and have the time. But
Right. Yes. Yeah. And the
the other
best part
videos that
was
are on
right
his
to
site,
the end, you know?
yeah, the other videos on his site are 30 seconds, a minute.
Yes,
And it's palatable. It's palatable.
it is. Yeah. Then they can, yeah.
All right, I'll play with it. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. I am just, I have 3 guests, and usually that's more than I have time for. I'm trying to think of what to talk about.
Delane, you do fine.
Are
You're one of my best interviewers.
we're live, aren't we?
No, the stream is
Okay.
stopped.
Okay.
Stream is stopped.
All right. Well, I can open it up to callers. And yeah, I'm just trying to think of what else. Okay, I got 10 minutes. I got to fill in.
Okay.
Okay, let's see. Okay, I'm gonna. I don't want.
You can go. You can go. Oh, there. You're live. There we go.
Okay. Okay. Welcome back. Thank you so much for being with us. You are listening to KMMU, Main Street Media, Utah. This is the Liberty Mom Show, and I'm your host, Dalane England. We're so happy that you're with us. And we have 2 really amazing Liberty moms that will be joining us very soon. One is Jamie Renda. She is a great Liberty mom, and we're going to be talking about how important life is. And then we also have Melanie Mortensen, who is running for the Davis County School Board. And we're really going to be talking about how important education is and what is happening in our education system and our public education system, because we really, really all need to get involved. We have some serious problems. So we're going to be talking about that. But right now, I want to share with you a story. I love the Constitution. I think we're so blessed to live in this amazing country. It is not a perfect country. No country ever has been, but it is an amazing country because it was founded on the principles of God. It was founded on Christian Judeo principles, the principles of the Bible. And because of that, what's so amazing about that is it respects and protects the rights of every individual, including those people who are not religious or who are not of that faith. No other country, a country that is not founded on Christian Judeo principles, will never protect the rights of the individual. They do not protect them. Everywhere you go in the world where it is not a Christian Judeo country, is not founded on those principles, you will find massive suppression of the individual who does not go along to get along, who does not agree, that is not part of that. And that is really important to our founders, and it's very important to me. So I think we're very blessed, and I love living in a country where we have these rights protected. And our founders were very wise in creating such a great republic. That was by design and by choice. They studied every form of government, and they knew what they were doing, and they were very, very careful and precise in creating this amazing republic. Now, it has never run perfectly. There's always been issues and always been problems because it's being run by imperfect people, by people who are flawed and who have, personal issues and egos and problems and desires and their different perspectives. And that is what's so great, is living in a country where, these rights are protected and we get to voice our opinion and we get to disagree. I love that. I love that we get to disagree. We do have a few minutes before our next guest. If anybody would like to call in, you're welcome to. It's 385-899-2134. 385-899-2134. 2134. And so I would like to just share with you some of the examples of some of our founders. We had amazing founding fathers and amazing founding mothers. And they, while we're talking about not being perfect, being flawed, let's talk about John Adams and Thomas Jefferson. They're two amazing people that were very different from each other. John Adams was a federalist. He very much believed in federalism. He's like, we need a strong federal government. It needs to be very limited. It needs to absolutely be limited, but we need to come together as a nation with all of these colonies or states. They need to come together, and we need to have a federal protection over these. So we need a strong but limited federal government. And then Thomas Jefferson was like anti-federalist. He's like, no, we don't want to risk what is happening today. We don't want to risk having a federal government that has very much power, that can usurp the authority or the power or the rights of the people, that can overreach or override onto people. That he just was, we have already been through that. We've fought a war to get away from that. That is not what we want to take any risks of imposing. So that was very, very important to the anti-federalists. And so to have half the country anti-federalists, half of them federalists, and have them come together and create a constitution that really every single state could agree on is really nothing short of a miracle. And John Adams, being this federalist, being the second, our first vice president and our second president, you have to admire and respect him. This is a man that was very, you don't have to, but I just think you should. I don't tell you what you have to do, but I have to respect him. I admire him so much because he, during the Boston Massacre, when our own colonists were shot and killed, and he was there, he knew that it was ugly and bloody and terrible, and he ran to give aid to these people. These were his countrymen. These were his neighbors and friends. And yet he felt so strongly about these British soldiers, even his enemy, even those he did not like and he considered an enemy living under martial law. He felt like, they have a right to be defended. They have a right to due process. And I see right now what is happening in our country. We, even as principled people, we are surrendering due process for just deciding and trying people in the court of public opinion. People have an accusation made against them, and people just pile on, and as if they were guilty, and they have not had their due process. And this is what John Adams, it's amazing the character that he had, no matter how much you might disagree with some of the things that he did or his views. I have to admire, he was so principled, because even at that time, thinking a young attorney with a young family, his livelihood was in it as an attorney, he felt passionately that these British soldiers should have due process. And he knew that it could cost him not only his reputation, but his livelihood as an attorney. He needed to be able to support his family. He needed the money. Up and coming, really just thriving, but barely surviving as an attorney. And he needed this income, but he still was willing to defend these men. And he did. He was their attorney and was sure it would cost him his livelihood, but it did not, because people could see that is the beauty of the Republic, that everyone gets the opportunity to have due process. No, this happened before we had the Constitution, but you can see why that was important to add into the Bill of Rights, was this due process, because the mentality and the thought process that everyone is equal and everyone gets to be defended, even if they're our enemy. And so that gives you some idea into the window of his character. Well, and then as president, he did make, obviously some mistakes. Thomas Jefferson definitely disagreed with him on more than one occasion. And so just imagine if you were, your student body president or, a class president, and your very best friend ran against you because they didn't agree with everything, which is what happened with John Adams. John Adams and Thomas Jefferson weren't just friends, their families were friends. They were very good friends with each other. They loved each other and respected each other. But they had this clash where they disagreed. And they talked to each other, they debated, and they managed to stay friends even as anti-federalists and federalists until Thomas Jefferson ran against John Adams. And then I think even more so was when Thomas Jefferson won and John Adams was no longer the president and Thomas Jefferson was. You can imagine how much that would hurt John Adams. It did. It hurt him. And how much that would get in the way of your relationship. If you ran against your very best friend, it might kind of get in the way of your relationship, especially if you're the one that lost. And so they went from being really best friends to being pretty darn good enemies and not really fighting each other, but not speaking to each other. And they went for many years without even communicating with each other, not talking to each other. And how human is that? How human are we to when we're offended, we no longer speak to one another? How hard it is to forgive. But one of their mutual friends, Dr. Benjamin Rush, he went to bed one night, and while he was in his dreams, he dreamt that God appeared to him, and God said to him, Dr. Benjamin, I have a mission for you. I want you to get John Adams and Thomas Jefferson back together because they do admire each other. They do love each other. They're hurt. They're both hurt. They're wounded. And I want you to get them back together. And with him being friends with both of them, he was the perfect person to do that. And so he got up in the morning and he thought, okay, what should I do? Like, how do I get them back together again? Well, he came up with an idea. So he sat down and he penned a letter, and he wrote a letter to John Adams. And he said, John, Thomas Jefferson has really missed you, and he really respects you and he admires you. He would love nothing more than to receive a letter from you. And he sent it off. And then he sat down and penned a letter to Thomas Jefferson. And he said, Thomas, John Adams has really missed you. He loves you and respects you, and he would love to have correspondence from you. He would love to hear from you. And so what do you think they both did? They both swallowed their big pride, and they each wrote a letter to each other. And so they started corresponding with each other. And as they did that, their relationship and their friendship was very much renewed. And they spent the rest of their lives writing to each other and corresponding. Benjamin Franklin, of course, being in Braintree, Massachusetts. Thomas Jefferson being in Virginia. Wasn't really very cohesive to be able to go visit each other. But they couldn't text each other, couldn't jump on a plane or a car. But they did correspond with each other in their letters and renewed their friendship and just spoke of how much they had missed each other. And you know what their greatest regret was? That they had let so many years pass that they did not correspond with one another. That was their really biggest regret. And they ended up, as you probably know and may or may not know, that as those years passed and their friendship renewed, on July 4th, on the 50th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, 8 o'clock in the morning approximately, Thomas Jefferson slipped through the veil and went to the other side. And in right about noon, both had been sick. John Adams, he was sick with his family was surrounding him. He was there. Thomas Jefferson family was with him as well. And John Adams' family, he was very sick. As he passed away, his last words were, Thomas Jefferson lives. And then he passed away, went through the veil and went to the other side. Now, many people, I'd say most people, believe that John Adams didn't realize Thomas Jefferson had just died a few hours earlier. That may or may not be true. I personally believe that John Adams was testifying of Thomas Jefferson still being alive, that he was resurrected, because John Adams was very Christian and very, very devout and very clear about his religion and his belief in the afterlife. Thomas Jefferson believed in the Bible, had read the Bible, studied the Bible, and was very much a student of the Bible, but didn't have as clear a testimony as John Adams did. And I believe that John Adams was being welcomed to the other side by Thomas Jefferson. That is just my personal opinion, which I love to share with you, even if you don't want it. You're entitled to my opinion, whether you want it or not. So I love that story because I think it really shows how very human the founding fathers are, and yet still their greatness and their greatness of character, and what amazing men and women our founding fathers and mothers were. And I am so happy to welcome our next guest, Liberty Mom, Jamie Renda. Jamie is, as I told you, she is one of the founders of Path Forward, bringing us all together. I just love that organization. She's done some great work. And she's also the owner of Brexton Potato. And I just thought it would be fun to have Jamie talk about that for a minute. Jamie, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us. And we cannot hear you, Jamie. And it doesn't look like your mic is muted, so I'm not sure why. But can you hear me, Jamie? Jamie, can you hear me? Okay, we've been having some technical difficulties today because this is just my chance to prove how non-technical I am. I do a pretty good job of that. Jamie, can you hear me? I cannot hear you, so I'm not sure what the problem is. And I don't show you muted. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to see if we can get this all worked out. And then we're going to be right back, and hopefully with Jamie, so we can talk to Jamie. So stay with us. We're going to be right back in just a moment.
Can I help you?
Hi.